Joining me now is the Australian's Nick Cater. Nick, thank you for your time tonight. Let's start with former Prime Minister Tony Abbott quoting Martin Luther King to attack the race-based referendum. He did the famous quote, "I want to live in a country where my 4 children are judged not by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character." This quote from Martin Luther King, those words, which we all celebrated for so long, they're offensive to many modern-day activists who push racial grievance and promote equity as opposed to equality.
Yeah, I think it would come as a great surprise to Martin Luther King Jr. and his many admirers around the world to learn that he is actually racist. You know, that was a racist statement. Because today to be colourblind is a racist act, and it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I was brought up to be colourblind, and I've tried to do that all my life. But now I'm supposed to be very aware of colour. I'm supposed to be aware of my colour, which is white, which means that I have, you know, less right to live on this planet apparently than others. But no, Tony Abbott really picked up this very clearly that the left has turned racism on its head in the last 10 years.
Well, the term anti-racism and a lot of the so-called anti-racist advocates and activists, some of them are virulently racist and they're almost unapologetic about it. So it is this Orwellian world where, you know, words mean the opposite of what they actually are. Now, let's move along to the Daily Telegraph Bush Summit. That kicked off in Tamworth, and farmers were protesting against renewables ahead of the Prime Minister's arrival.
We just simply don't want the environment wrecked for the idea of renewable energy. It's a tragedy. You know, we've got koalas, we've got region honeyeaters, it's the rarest bird in Australia, and that's where the wind farm's going to go.
20 years' time, what are they going to do? We're going to have forests of dead windmills.
These things are just destroying our rural amenity. They're as if rural people are second-class citizens. You wouldn't see any around the city, would you?
They make some excellent points there, Nick. Flying between Melbourne and Sydney, you look down and you see the landscape scarred with these ugly solar farms. And of course, there are massive windmill projects being erected around the country.
Yeah, I was visiting a Rye Park in the Yass Valley earlier this week, which is where the largest wind farm so far in New South Wales is being built, and the community's just been torn apart by this. It's split into those who've earned money out of this and those who've just had to put up with all the inconvenience and the eyesore and the loss of value of their houses. It is terrible, Rita. And it seems to me that what's happened is somebody in Macquarie Street, in this case in New South Wales or in the Victorian government or whichever government, has sat down with a map, drawn a big circle. That's a renewable energy zone. That's where it's going. No reference to the people. They used to ask people, by the way, whether they approved of it. Now they don't, because they get this thing called community licence. And I'm not quite sure what a community licence is, yes. You know, whether you have to pass a test for it the same as your driving test. But it's not democracy. Community licence is not democracy.
Well, the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, was speaking about nuclear energy at the Bush Summit. Let's have a listen.
It allows you, through the micro-modular reactor or through the small modular reactor, that countries like France and the United States, China, the UK, other countries in Europe are now investigating. It gives you the opportunity to open up irrigation, to provide support into a community so that where you've got a retiring asset, a retiring coal-fired generation asset, for example, it gives you the ability to plug and play into an existing distribution network. It means that you don't have the capital requirement for the 28,000 kilometres of poles and wires through prime farming land, through national parks, and it allows you to reduce emissions, no emissions from nuclear technology, and final point is it's exactly the same technology that's going to be deployed on the submarines that the government has now ordered.
Nick, it's expected that the coalition is going to announce a coal to nuclear policy any minute now. It could be a game changer as we're seeing prices skyrocket. And the reality is we need baseload power, and wind and solar ain't it.
Yeah, well, you've got to remember, Rita, that nuclear is the most expensive form of clean energy there is, except for all the others. That's the thing, you see. Lots of countries have taken it up and got cheap electricity. I mean, Ontario's got electricity about a third of the cost of ours, and they've cleaned out their coal-fired power stations using nuclear. But according to our Energy Minister Chris Bowen, to use nuclear is cheating. It's cheating. You've got to do it the hard way, apparently, which is the way we're trying to do it. Which of course,
you've got to bankrupt yourself.
You've got to bankrupt yourself, and you've got to put up with the fact that, you know, I'd be lucky to do this now, right, because, I don't know, it's a fairly still day out there, the wind's not blowing, the sun's gone down. You'd have to probably put your program on a different time if you wanted me. That's the problem with this unreliable renewable energy.
Now, 2 Victorian councils are under fire for spending ratepayers' money, thousands of dollars of ratepayers' money, on the pro-yes campaign for The Voice. Queenscliff is hosting a voice forum with only yes speakers on the panel. They even rejected local Liberal Sarah Henderson's offer to be there and present the no case. And we've got Marybeck City Council voting in favour of giving $18,000 away to a community education campaign around The Voice. These local councils, they want to get involved in national issues, but they can't be fair about it. They can't give both sides an even go.
Well, they can't, but I suppose they don't want racists there, do they? I mean, I read Mike Carlton informs me this week in one of his tweets that there's only 3 reasons why you'd vote no. 1, because you're a mad Peter Dutton fan. 2, because you're racist, and 3, because you're stupid. So it must be one of those things, I guess. But I mean, the great thing about this, Rita, is it is going to referendum. Everybody gets 1 vote, even the jumped-up mayor of whatever council it is who happens to be making a stink. You've only got 1 vote, pal. So it's this democracy.
Well, I think the problem is we are so over-governed, and when it comes to local government, most people don't even know who they're voting for. So I think that's half the reason why these mediocre councillors, these activists, get elected, because we're all forced to vote or we're going to get fined, and we don't know who these clowns are when we cast our vote. Now, I mentioned earlier Yes campaigner Noel Pearson warning us that a failed referendum will be a loss to everyone, even the no campaigners. Have a listen.
A no outcome will come at a great cost to the country. And if they say no to that, you think they're going to say yes to that? If they say no to that, next time you'll be talking about whether they'll say yes to this. This is not costless. This has a cost attached to it.
The Yes camp is spiralling, Nick. It's good to see Noel Pearson take a less militant approach than we have seen in the past, but many other Yes campaigners are sticking with their simplistic message that if you vote no, then you're a bigot, you're a racist.
Yeah. Well, I think Noel's right. It will come, if there's a no vote, it will come at a great cost to the Indigenous political class of which he's a member. You know, there'll be many fewer of those jobs, administrative jobs, sitting on boards, holding inquiries. There'll be fewer of those, and that will be a blow for the Indigenous political class. But that's the thing about it, Rita. What this voice will empower them and disempower ordinary Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who will just once again be steamrolled by Canberra, represented by people who, may be Indigenous, but they certainly don't represent their people on their land, and they just feel once again disempowered by this whole thing.